Welcome to Praxis Journeys, where we explore the paths of today's most influential leaders in education and the real-world strategies they're using to drive lasting change. I'm Vinay Ganti. In each episode, I sit down with the people shaping the future of our schools to talk candidly about the big issues: teacher recruitment, leadership, innovation, school culture, policy, and more. Whether you're an educator, administrator, or advocate, you'll find fresh ideas and actionable insights to inform your own journey and help students thrive. Let's dive in.
In this conversation, Rishabh Khanna, founder of Surasa, discusses his journey in transforming education through teacher training and mobility. He emphasizes the importance of global teacher standards and the need for internationalization in the teaching profession. The discussion also highlights the partnership between Surasa and ETS Praxis, aiming to address the teacher shortage in the United States and promote teaching as a global profession. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks for your time today. Before we dive into the discussion, I'd love to just give you a chance to introduce yourself to our audience and who you are and where you're calling us in from today and things like that.
Thank you so much for having me, Vinay. Hello, everybody. My name is Rishabh Khanna. I'm the founder of Surasa. I live in Dubai. That's where my family is based. But I think most people know today that I live out of an airplane, traveling around the world most of the times, trying to find outstanding teachers, running schools, and how we can, help them meet each other, find each other, and transform school education systems.
Fantastic. And we're really excited to talk about more sort of the partnership that we have together, but we'll get to that later on in the conversation. At least to start though, I'd love to just hear more about Larasa, your journey to sort of found the company. I know you founded it, I think, also with your brother as well, right? So tell us that story. Sort of what brought you to this
Yeah.
moment where you're like, you know what? My reason for waking up every morning is to fundamentally transform education.
Absolutely. So I'll start from the very beginning of my journey with education. It was not a planned or, a very conscious move. I just kind of, you know, serendipitously met or had this experience of working with students. And, it was love at first sight. I knew education moves the needle when it comes to somebody's life's transformation. And that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Started working on that, very soon realized there's a lot more impact available. Area of impact that can be done in teacher education. I started working on teacher education. One fine day, called my brother. He used to work in the corporate, was doing very good at strategy consulting, different kind of consulting projects. And I said, well, I think there's a lot of impact that can be created and a big business that can be made out of teacher education. So being as honest as possible. And he's my younger brother, so I think for him it was enough me, my judgment of the thing. And it's been more than 13 years that we've been working together now. These 13 years, we've done teacher education in different forms. We've worked for, individual teachers, schools, group of schools. We've done government projects. We've transformed and impacted teacher education in multiple ways. Uh, we've created masters in education programs. We've created postgraduate diplomas for teachers. Anything and everything that can impact a teacher's life, make them more successful. We've helped teachers in finding employment across the globe, making teachers literally travel from one part of the world to the other part of the world at sometimes as much as high as 2x of their original salary. And then they reach a new place and they're earning 20 times more. So that impact of the power of that impact of creating mobility for a teacher, whether it's an economic mobility in their own city, in their own country, or a global mobility leading to an economic mobility, I think that's what powers and empowers every single team member at Surasa today. We are 150 plus people. Many people externally see me and Ankit, my co-founder, my younger brother, in talking about Surasa, but there are 150 plus people who wake up every single morning to make teachers more successful. So that's like the background of how it all reached where it reached.
Fantastic. And no, it's funny. You hit on a couple things that I think are worth highlighting even further. One is sort of this belief that teaching is a profession, right? And every profession deserves the necessary support structure around continuous lifelong learning and upskilling, right? Two, that it's a global profession. And so that there is this sort of, it's very easy for teaching. I think healthcare has a similar disadvantage at times in countries where you sort of make it very country specific or the context around it. Like in America, the way in which we pay for healthcare is very unique compared to other OECD countries. So as a result, we forget the way in which we actually, though, care for people. Oftentimes, there's a lot of overlap and commonalities for the same way that those similar diseases or surgical procedures or other things are actually done in other parts of the world. And I think teaching and education has a similar challenge where the way in which societies have decided to pay for, structure, organize, and deploy educational models are very, very country or government and politics specific, but the actual underlying craft of teaching and helping students, kids learn, I think we increasingly are realizing is somewhat universal. And there is a lot of commonalities from one context to the next. And so I think those two things, especially the fact that it is a profession, that it is a global profession. And so there's value in viewing things from those two axes, I think is super powerful. I think it's very much one of the reasons why we're very excited to be working with you all today. So Surasa itself, you mentioned, you've launched master's degrees, diploma programs, but before we get to those higher level offerings, at its core, how many people do you have on the platform today? And what are most of them using Surasa for?
Love to work on those numbers, but just I'd love to share one comment on what you mentioned right before this question. So, you mentioned about how different countries hold teacher education, teacher quality so close to their heart because it's one profession that directly impacts the future of the entire society.
Yep. Yep.
Think about a small country, 100,000 people. Imagine there are 100 teachers impacting all of them. All the young ones are going to be meeting these teachers almost every single day of the year, barring, of course, the holidays and everything. Teachers hold the key to what the society would look like in the future. And that's why most of the governments take teachers and teacher education very seriously. And that's why most governments around the world create something called professional teacher standards. The US has its own teacher standards, UK has some teacher standards, Singapore, Dubai, UAE, India, or everybody aspires to have their own teacher standards. And what do these teacher standards really define? They define what skills somebody should learn to become a teacher and what skills should a teacher continuously keep polishing to become a successful teacher or an impactful teacher on an everyday basis. So what you mentioned, Vinay, absolutely bullseye. There are a lot of overlaps on these teacher standards around the world. And that's what Surasa really ended up doing. So 2020, 2021, we were actually literally sitting down, studying teacher standards of different countries around the world. And we identified what are the overlaps and created something called Surasa Skills Framework. And we said, now this skills framework covers teacher standards of different countries at the same time. If you pull out a teacher qualification, a postgraduate diploma or a master's in education or a professional graduate certificate out of this skills framework, it has the ability to meet requirements of multiple countries at the same time. And that's what has been the IP. That's what has been the strength of Surasa programs, that when somebody prepares on these programs, they prepare for the world. So with this vision, with this proposition, we went out to teachers and we said, hey guys, we'd love to work with you, love to help you in learning the teacher standards, teaching skills from a global perspective, not just from a country specific perspective, and become a truly international teacher. So that proposition, it was the first time somebody was bringing that proposition. There are teachers who teach in international schools, but they have to focus on local skills of the country that they're teaching in. But this is a completely new way of looking at it that, hey, can I become a teacher? Can I learn the skill sets in a way that I can now fly to any part of the world and become a teacher there? So that was the proposition. Dubai was like the perfect place for us to think about that, start that, because when we started it, Dubai at that point in time used to have some 225 to 30 private schools offering 18 plus global curricula in one city.
Yeah.
So you're literally training teachers and placing them in an IB school, in American curriculum school, British curriculum school, Indian curriculum school, French curriculum schools. We've kind of had our graduates going to different category of schools and impacting within those schools. And we would then go and talk to those graduates and ask them, hey, can we help you further? Is there something that you're not able to do? And super proud to say that our graduates have gone within a couple of years, moved from becoming teachers to senior leaders to heads of schools, to be nominated for state teacher prizes, everything coming from a perspective that they were all, whether they are getting a prize or nominated for a prize in the US or in UAE or in India, they were all taught the same curriculum, exact same curriculum, which came out of, studying different curricula around the world, teacher education curricula. So with that being as the base, today we have over 500,000 teachers from different parts of the world who come to our platform to do different short courses, long courses. And then we have around 1,000 plus graduates, a couple thousand graduates every year who are doing our graduate level programs, which are year-long programs to really get certified as an international teacher. So this is what the dynamics look like today.
Very, very, very awesome. I mean, it is amazing to think about a place like Dubai. I mean, geographically, it's so small, but pedagogically, to your point, it's so diverse. I've heard this from other people who work or place, leaders at schools in the UAE, especially because of how international their population is and the preference of the parents. There's this been proliferation of different types of models and now they're starting to sort of think through how sort of laissez-faire, how hands-off they want to be versus whether or not they want to provide some sort of national level guidance around those models, right? And so it's not that dissimilar than the US in that regard. I mean, we live in a federal society, so we actually have 50, even though we're one country, we have 50 different, plus our territories, 50 different states that have a significant amount of autonomy and discretion around what their standards look like, right? So there's no national certification exam or licensure exams in the US for teachers. It's all states. And that's actually in similar ways to what the Surasa vision is. That was very much the ETS Praxis sort of model, which is that you look, we are going to align ourselves and model ourselves to serve the widest net of states standards for the specific subject areas in which we're testing. And 40 out of 50 states right now and a handful of territories have said, yes, the off-the-shelf praxis tests are sufficiently applicable to our needs where we're going to use that instead of trying to customize and create something bespoke, right? And it's actually the bespoke sort of testing regime or model is actually an area that we've been sort of systematically removing ourselves over time over the last 5, 10 years. And it's sort of a premise on this larger. I don't want to call it belief because it's backed by data and evidence. This larger sort of observation that these standards for the most part are pretty overlapping and consistent with one another and complementary. And so and we're seeing it, there's also a significant movement of reciprocity that is developing in the United States when it comes to practice, where as long as your cut score is of a sufficiently high level for whatever state you want to move into, many states now, I think it's up to 17 states, I think, have signed a reciprocity compact that would allow for people not to have to retake their praxis if they move from one state to another. So we're seeing some of that interstate mobility starting to come into reality as well, similar to the global mobility you're talking about. It's really hard to sort of talk about these topics um, I'm trying my best with these conversations in general to keep politics outside of the conversation. But when we talk about global mobility, and not just US politics, but in general, sort of what is like sort of popular on a political stage around issues like immigration and nationalization, internationalization, and all these types of ideologies has a fundamental impact on the viability and the success of any sort of international vision, right? What are you seeing today happening across the globe when it comes to as certain governments maybe have become more nationalist or country first versus others who are sort of looking to invest deeper into pro-immigration policies? How are those sort of dynamics impacting your business and your ability to realize your vision?
So that's a wonderful question, actually, Vinay. So since we've been really working very closely to teachers on the ground and schools on the ground, what we've seen is that different countries have different frameworks that they follow, right? Even if I just pick up Middle East, right? UAE and Saudi are like next to each other, but then uh, there's a huge difference in population. There's a huge difference in the percentage of national population and international population. So how many expats are there? How many national people are available for teaching jobs? So picking up from that example, from country to country, there are policies which try to define what should be the skills of the teacher and how many teachers can we have who have the exact skill set. And then can we create specific visas, specific policies? There are some countries which are actually, as we discussed, launching special teacher visas just to import teachers, just to make sure that teachers are available because that directly impacts school education system and ends the future. So now you mentioned that not just US, but different parts of the world, but what I've seen, even in the US, as I'm talking to schools, I'm talking to visa providers, there are those categories of visas which actually are seeing a lot more support than others. So, for example, a cultural exchange visa, which basically is also like a diplomacy visa, where teachers from around the world are invited to teach in the US, specifically as a cultural exchange structure. And it gives almost 5 years of exposure of that international teacher to the US systems and the US school systems to an international culture. Now, what that does is adds value to the education system as a whole, to the school district system as a whole, that students of the city, students of the district, students of the state, students of the country are able to look at new models that might be prevalent in other parts of the world. So I think we wouldn't be able to create like a blanket environment framework or specification of what's happening around the world around mobility. But specifically when it comes to teachers, I feel every country wants to invite high quality teachers from other parts of the world so that there can be enough, osmosis of education delivery systems and pedagogical systems so that overall everybody can grow. So that's what I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think long term, I'm incredibly bullish on the globalization of teaching. And I think the reason being is that I think to your point, when you sort of countries realize how you already said it earlier, how impactful and how much influence a teacher has in the future of a nation and what it looks like and what its makeup is. I think most countries will figure out how to develop models that will provide sufficient supply of quality teachers everywhere.
In
And
fact,
I think,
just a
yeah,
very quick one on that one as well. In fact, if you just look at the flip side of it, because you mentioned about teacher supplies there, I think most governments around the world today acknowledge that there are teacher shortages. And if I just even have to underline it, there are skilled teacher shortages happening around the world. One of the ways of making the teaching profession more aspirational for the next generations is to make teaching an international profession. The moment we start looking at teaching as a global profession instead of a local profession or a national profession, what we're doing is we are creating avenues for growth, globalization, internationalization for a student teacher who wants to become a teacher in the future and see that I can get the same exposure that an MBA or an engineer or a doctor or you know, a software engineer might get because they get international opportunities. So I think countries have started opening up on that. I know of certain countries which have literally created something called teacher export policies, teacher exchange policies, that they are at a government level promoting teachers from their country to go to the other countries around the world and invite teachers from other parts of the world to come to their country. That internationalization as an underline on the teaching profession, I think that's pretty impactful and empowering for making teaching more aspirational. Sorry.
no, I think that's super interesting. I mean, I think it's actually really relevant to one of the criticisms that you hear about teaching in the United States of early career teachers or people who are going in or consider going into the profession is like, it's not clear what is the value of their teaching credentials and their degrees beyond the immediate sort of job that they have in that moment. It's not like I think a lot of people have this conception that the only path for advancement in teaching is becoming try to become an assistant principal, then a principal, then move up into the district office. And there's just like one path. And if you don't want that path, there is no career trajectory, no ladder, there's no opportunities to do more, do different things. And I think that's actually like fundamentally not true in a lot of places. There's all sorts of ways to differentiate your career through subject matter expertise, through mentorship of other teachers, all this things. But to your point, there's a whole nother sort of dimension that we could be talking to teachers about, which is like, okay, like establish yourself here, but then you could use that skill set to go anywhere, type thing, right? And I think there's something really powerful about that as well. That there's definitely an opportunity to sort of hit on that. I mean, turning to the US, and I think turning a little bit more specifically to our partnership, you talked about the cultural exchange visa, and you talked about specific high need areas. In the US, what we're seeing are significant needs, right, in special education, high level math and science courses, increasingly dual language needs as well. Many of these areas are like very well suited for an international teacher solution. And so as a result, as of, late last year, and we're actually in market piloting with some districts this year for the upcoming school fall. Surasa and ETS Praxis have partnered together to actually provide a joint offering to districts for J1 visa sponsored teachers on the cultural exchange program to teach in these high need areas. What sort of drew you to partner with us on this problem and on this area? And sort of anything else you'd want to add to that, sort of just to let people know about the partnership?
Absolutely. So, US has been the land of opportunity for people since always. And there is this American dream that people always talk about, and people in the US talk about that, and people around the world talk about that. And while all of that is out there, one thing that US really adds is that entire experience of teaching in the US as a cultural aspect of it. So when I first started coming to the US and meeting school leaders, school district officers, what I saw was that sometimes even two school districts which on the same street, two schools belonging to different school districts on the same street would have a completely different cultural structure, would be completely different, a soul as an organization. And we're talking about the same city, right? We're talking about the same state. So now when you expand it from a street to a city to a state to 50 different states, you see what diversity it brings to overall somebody's learning experience when they come to the US to teach. So that was something that really drew me, because as a teacher, you're not just a teacher, you're also a learner. You learn a lot. So that was like the attraction. When I first met the ETS team, what I saw was the depth of knowledge that the team had of how US functions as an education society, as an education economy. I've worked with different teams. I've been meeting different teams across ETS. I've met with the test making team, and I've met the business team, and I've met the management, I've met the ETS capital team. And everybody focuses on one thing: how do we create better human capital? How do we enhance measurability in skills, competencies? And when education is the core of an organization, business automatically happens. So I think that was the first core of what really attracted me to ETS. We know that millions of teachers have trusted ETS for their licensing assessments, for working at schools, for being able to take the first step towards becoming a successful teacher. And for us, that was like a very natural, attraction to partner with an organization which believes in making teachers, which believes in creating teachers and making them successful. So for us, it was a very natural, partnership. And as I started meeting more team members, we saw that the impact we could create together. When I talk about ETS Praxis and Surasa partnership on supporting schools in finding international teachers, I still remember this one conversation that I had with one of the leaders at ETS Praxis, where they said that for us, we've been helping schools in finding high quality teachers for so many years. We just want to stand by our state partners, by our school district partners, and tell them that whatever it will take to get high quality teachers to schools in the US, we will do that. That kind of was very powerful, right? When somebody's not coming to you and saying that, hey, we want to just go in and do this because it will be millions and billions of dollars worth of business, but saying we want high quality teachers in every single school. And we want to make sure that we'll do everything that it takes to bring those teachers locally, nationally, or internationally. But our school partners, our state partners should have high quality teachers. That was super powerful. And we think that was like the needle mover for us, that let's partner and let's start with the journey.
Definitely appreciate that. And I mean, I think that, yeah, for us, I mean, we're very excited for this partnership. Like I said, we're already starting to see some successes, and we plan to have some of the superintendents who are taking the leap with us on this show, in the coming months as well. So we can talk to them about where they saw, hear from them why they thought we're different from some of the other providers out there. And I think, for us as well, this is the beginning of a much sort of larger story for ETS Praxis around what is the full range of solutions we could be providing our partners, our state partners, but also the districts under them to really help them move the needle on some of their biggest issues, right? I mean, for example, you've talked about, you mentioned already that you've developed master's degrees. We know that professional development, upskilling is another big area and need for districts. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to help them there as well. Induction programming is another area where we're talking to some other partners around. So we're just so excited to be part of this journey with you, of really sort of figuring out how to really sort of change the conversation around high quality international teachers in the United States and use them in a way and deploy them in places where historically they haven't necessarily found a lot of traction, like in highly quantitative or analytical subject areas like math and science and special education and places like that. And so we're really looking at this as a long-term opportunity to sort of change the conversation around global mobility in just as much as we are about the teacher shortage. So really, really appreciate that. So, I mean, so like yeah, so we're really excited about this partnership and we can't wait to do more over time. I guess any last sort of things you wanted to mention or say about Surasa or the work that we're doing together, like, and then sort of give you like the last word on this, and then we can sort of wrap up and let people enjoy their day.
Absolutely. So I think me and the entire team at Surasa, we are pretty excited about this partnership with ETS Praxis because we can clearly visualize the impacts that this partnership can have for school districts across the country. Imagine schools no longer have to just rely on warm bodies to be in a school, in a classroom for students, but actually being able to choose a teacher from anywhere in the world to be present in the classroom and really deliver that high quality learning outcomes that every single student deserves, right? So sky's the limit. Sky's the limit, Vinay. And I think the impact and the reach that ETS team, Praxis team already has, and the kind of work that the entire Surasa team has been doing on upskilling teachers, the two forces coming together would be really helpful, would be really great for both to schools as well as teachers around the world. So that's what I feel.
And we're 100% in agreement on our side, and like we cannot be more excited to make a meaningful dent in not only the teacher shortage in the United States, but really to elevate teaching as a global profession long term. I think is such a worthy sort of North Star for us to align around. So Rishabh, thank you again for your time today. I know it's probably getting a little towards the back half of your workday today in Dubai. Really appreciate the time, and let's keep the conversation going in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, Vinay. Cheers.
Well, thanks for listening to Praxis Journeys. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know someone who'd find this conversation helpful, feel free to share it with them. I'm Vinay Ganti, and until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep working toward the kind of change our students deserve.